Since I had so much content for how to use Distress Embossing Glazes, I decided to do a third video for you. So let's get started. Okay, so now that we've cut the corners off the tag, the next thing we want to do is actually add our image. So I am going to use this flower. So in this case, I'm going to take the stamp. I'm going to add the image. When I'm using block stamps like this, I don't want to take any risks that it might not stamp well. There you go. So you have your stamped image, and you want to make sure it's fully dry before you move on. So now I'm using the bullet tip embossing pen, and I'm actually going to start drawing. And I am using some of the Zentangle patterns that I usually use in my art. I am not a Zentangle instructor, so if you are looking for someone to teach you Zentangle, there are people out there that specialize in it. But I have a really good book of Zentangle designs that I personally like to use in my art. And it's a little hard to see. I think in the future I'd probably use a lighter paper just so that I could see what I'm doing a little bit better. And then once you've done a section, if you're not too sure where you're at or what you've actually drawn, the best thing to do is actually go and add your embossing powder and see where you're at. And then once you know where you're at, the nice thing is then you can start adding in additional images and additional things. So again, you can see some of my little designs in there. I think it's important when you do this, use a pattern that you're used to using so that you'll remember where you left off. So basically spend the next little while going back and forth, adding details as you can see them. Yeah, so next time I would move to a lighter paper. It does make this a little bit easier. You can actually see the lines that you put in because I used something that was really colorful. It is a lot harder. So something to think about when you're doing designs like this, about like what your intention is so that you don't end up in a situation where you're having to do so much back and forth. And these ones I'm going to do with the hickory smoke. And I'm going to color these in with the bullet marker. The other option is you could have always drawn these and then actually filled in some of these spots with embossing ink. That's also another option. There's lots of different ways you can do this. Again, for me, it's a lot more about seeing how far I can push some of these products to see if they'll do what I hope they will do. And now my last layer for this is going to actually be coloring in. So using the pen to kind of color everywhere. And actually in this case, I want to try to get the entire stamp, because if I get the entire stamp, what it's going to do is it's going to make the black area still black, but then it's going to have everything as being shiny, and it's going to actually really bring out this image in a really nice way. So it's kind of important that you get the whole thing. And again, I'm doing everything in red. If I had some yellow embossing powder, which I actually don't at this point, at least not the transparent stuff, I do believe that Tim Holtz probably has a color in it. I just haven't purchased it yet. I would probably have actually done these center stamens in a different color just to add more interest, but I'm working with what I got. Looks like there's a couple spots I missed, so I'm going to have to go back in and fix those. Okay, so I'm going to fill in a couple of the spots that I missed. It's also a nice thing if you want to try to add a little bit of additional shading by putting that second layer of embossing powder, you're going to get a deeper image. So yeah, by adding those additional layers of embossing powder, you can see where I have the first layer and where I have the second. So you can actually even create shading in that way as well too, where you aren't necessarily sticking with just one layer of powder. You can have multiple layers and get a more interesting effect by adding it as shading. So here are 3 tags, again using the embossing glaze in a lot of different ways. Again, different techniques, different purposes. It really depends on what kind of look you're going for. I hope that you have found this video useful. If you have, I would really appreciate if you subscribe to my channel, click the notification button so you don't miss any upcoming videos, and then perhaps check out my website at www.hopalongstudio.com. There I have a lot more creative content and some more inspiration for you, and I go into more detail about these tags. I hope that you have a great day, and I will see you next time.